Redeemed, rehabilitated, and real entertaining. This is the Carl Jackson Podcast.
All right, welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast on this Thursday. This is going to be a great show. I've been looking forward to this interview. Today with me, we have Dave. We have Dave Boon Benton. We also have Sarah Adams with us. This is going to be a jam-packed show. I'm looking forward to asking questions. Hopefully, they can answer as many of those questions as possible. I want to encourage all of you to subscribe to the podcast, thecarljacksonshow.com. Also, SalemPodcastNetwork.com, or anywhere that you find podcasts. Find me on social media, the Carl Jackson Show on social media. Also support Mike Lindell. You see what they're doing with Mike Lindell. You can support him and this podcast. Go to mypillow.com. Use the promo code Carl0263. You'll be supporting American manufacturing, American jobs. You'll be supporting a patriot in Mike Lindell, and you'll also be supporting this podcast right now. Perkel and Giza Dream Sheets are on sale. $29.98, 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. So please, promo code Carl, or give them a call, 800-858-0263. Okay, now let me go right to my guest. First, obviously the issue is Benghazi. I want you guys, if you would, to introduce yourself, starting with you, Dave, or do you? Hey, listen, it would be an honor if I could call you Boon, but I don't want to. I don't want to step out of my place here. So you let me know what you're comfortable with, and then also Sarah Adams. I want you both to explain your roles in Benghazi, if you would, please.
Yeah, Boon's fine. So Dave Boon Benton, I was one of the physical security officers there during that night.
Okay, and then Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah Adams. I was the counterterrorism targeter in Benghazi, and then later I went on to be an advisor on a select committee in Benghazi.
Okay, so this is very fascinating. A select committee. Boon, you were there that night, so you guys are going to be able to tell us and break down a lot of the things that we simply don't know. And I want to make sure that Americans don't forget about this. And obviously, you guys are keeping this alive. If you don't mind, Sarah, please tell us what I just learned, honestly, by watching some of the YouTube videos that are up. I didn't know this before. Will you explain to the audience what a CIA targeter is?
Yeah, basically our job is to find, fix, and finish terrorists to go after, and then also to kind of look for assets to recruit or find other gaps the government is missing and how to get at them. Okay, and then Boon, you were obviously there that night. Many people have read the book 13 Hours. Many people have seen the film. It seems to me, at least initially, it's almost as if, were you still active in the military during the time that the book and the movie came out? Because we didn't see much of you initially. We saw Tig, we saw Tonto, we've seen Oz. But you were there. You were with as a matter of.
So yeah, Tonto was with me that night. So,
okay.
In the movie, I'm the 6'4" white guy.
That's right. Okay. Okay. All right.
So. Yeah. All right. I wasn't active duty. I was working for the.
Say that again. You broke up there.
I wasn't active duty. I was working for the agency.
Okay. All right.
So while those guys were doing interviews, I was still working for the agency.
Okay. That makes total makes total sense. Can we? And you guys, I mean, feel free to go where you want to go with this, but I want to make sure that we clear up some of the lies that many of us were told about Benghazi and even conspiracy theories. And I want you guys to feel free to please talk about your were we running guns in Benghazi? And I've listened to some YouTube videos, but even I was confused on that. So was the United States running guns in Benghazi?
No, we weren't running guns in Benghazi. There was hope by members of our Congress that there would be weapons going to Syria, and John McCain very publicly was working on that. But that had nothing to do with Benghazi. Even when, if and when he got that approved, it wouldn't have happened out of Benghazi. We were a very small shop.
And I wanted to clear that up because even many conservative outlets that I think try to support our troops and our missions, whether abroad, if you will, there was much confusion about that, even with myself. So I wanted to make sure that was cleared up right from the get go. Boon, can I ask you, when you were in Benghazi, what exactly you were with security? What exactly did that entail? What did your role entail?
So that's actually a undercover tactical unit that we call GRS, Global Response Staff, and that's all we really say about it.
But one thing I can say, when I'm overseas, he's the person who protects me.
Okay, all right, okay, that's perfect. And I knew that there would be some questions that could not be answered. So feel free, obviously, like you did, just smack me down. I'm have no problem with that. I just want to make sure that you guys get out your message and you set the record straight. I guess before we go on, why don't you tell us a little bit about your book that's going to be coming out and why you guys decided to write that? Because I think that's very important.
So there's been a lot of books about Benghazi. There's been a lot of movies about Benghazi. So how this book is different is this book really gets into the who and the why of Benghazi. All the other books, to include 13 Hours, focus on the perspective of a team that was there or an individual that was there. So this one really gets into who the attackers were, why they attacked, where they are now, and kind of where they come from. So it's really about the attackers.
Well, can we explore that a little bit? Do you guys mind going there? I mean, the book is called Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy. I'm not sure how much you want to divulge before the book is actually out. And when is it set to come out, if you don't mind me asking?
We're still waiting on DoD approval. The CIA's approved it, but the DoD hasn't. We were told they were going to approve it in August, and so now it's been delayed. We are happy to go into it. There's a lot of content. We have over 100 attackers in the book, so you really can't get into the details because there's a lot of content, so ask anything you want.
Okay, when you say there's 100 attackers that you guys identified and specifically know?
Correct. Yes, we identified more than 100 by name and photo who were at the consulate attacking us.
Okay, that's that alone to me is, frankly, is very impressive. We can go ahead and count out that Obama said there was this video that stirred up this controversy in Benghazi. We knew that was a lie, but do you guys want to speak to that and clarify that?
Yeah, I'd happy to. Yeah, they basically said it was a video, a protest came of it, and 20 guys showed up and protest outside. It actually was an Al-Qaeda planned attack. They started planning it in June of 2012. The plan was to go in and kidnap the ambassador. You'll see in our book, they used a lot of Al-Qaeda members, over 50 Al-Qaeda members, to carry out the attack alone. And then they tried to obviously kidnap the ambassador. It did not happen. One thing a lot of people don't realize is that protest in Egypt was actually planned for August. They moved it to September 11th because of the date. In between the date of when it was supposed to occur and September 11th, the translation of that video came out. So those gentlemen in Egypt also said, hey, let's tack on this video and say it's part of the protest. But that protest was mostly about getting Al-Qaeda members released from prison, like the blind sheikh who we have in the United States. That's what it was focused on originally. And then the video shifted it a little bit in Egypt. Nothing to do with Libya.
Okay, so when you say that we knew, or you talked about the attack on the consulate, knowing as early as June, is this subsequent to the attack? Is this part of your involvement in the select committee on Benghazi, or is this something that our intelligence agencies knew that this attack was coming and they knew as early as June of that year?
Yeah, that's from our investigation. We don't think the intelligence community has that. All of our investigation is unclassified. We went and did it ourselves. So I don't think they collected any foreknowledge of the attack. If that's what you're asking, no.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Perfect. I definitely wanted to clear that up. As far as the 100 people that were involved in the attack on the consulate, were they all associated with Al Qaeda? How did you even go about? I mean, I'm sure this is some information you can't divulge, but that's just so impressive to me. How do you go about finding out who these people are in a country, and I think in an area of the world where I'd imagine that's very difficult to do?
Yeah, it's been a long investigation. We actually started not long after 2014. It is all open source. We're not going to reveal our sources or our methods, but it is an open source investigation, so nothing's classified. We do have information, though, that the U.S. government doesn't have. As far as them being connected, all of them are connected from one point or another, and we really get into the book on the associations and how all the attackers are connected.
Yeah, and one thing we want to point out is, I know it sounds difficult to collect on terrorists in Libya, but remember, these terrorists for the last decade have been terrorizing the Libyans. They have killed full members of all the men in some of their families. So these are the Libyans' enemies too, not just our enemies. So they do also want to get these terrorists out of their country. So we kind of have a mutual agreement that, the Libyans want them out too.
Okay, that's fascinating. Boon, you just said that you guys have collected data and information that the U.S. government doesn't have. I mean, that's I almost don't know how to react to that. One thing, one reaction of mine is, wow, that's okay. That's very impressive. And then another reaction that I have is that's kind of disappointing that the U.S. government doesn't have that information. In your opinion, was there a lack of interest in gaining that information?
Absolutely. They chose not to pursue the investigation. They chose not to bring these attackers to justice. They created their own false narrative. They put blame on a mastermind who wasn't a mastermind, which was Abu Khatallah, and they chose to just convict him, close the door, case closed. Let's forget about Benghazi.
Will you tell us who Bukatala is? I'm not familiar with it. Will you tell us who this gentleman is and the case they made about him?
Yes, so his name is Ahmed Abu Khatallah. He was a militant in Benghazi. He showed up late to the attacks. He is not a member of Al Qaeda, so he was chosen essentially by our government as the mastermind to tell the public he was the mastermind. So they did an operation. They went into Libya. They captured him. They brought him back to the United States. They prosecuted him, and he got 22 years in prison, basically for looting. He looted the compound, but he was not the mastermind. A member of Al Qaeda was the mastermind.
Okay. This is man. Honestly, I almost just right off the bat, just kind of frustrating to hear. I'll be just straight up with you. I mean, I'm a conservative. I'm a Republican. I know that doesn't matter to you guys. And I don't know how things work or if they work any differently under certain administrations, but it just frustrates me to no end to hear some of this stuff, knowing just the lies that were spread at the time. Would you say, in your opinion, either one of you, feel free to answer this, did the Obama administration, did they do all they could to protect the American people or the personnel that were in Benghazi, or were you guys kind of an afterthought?
So that has multiple answers. When it comes to the agency, we were very well protected and very well prepared. When it comes to the State Department, they were not. The State Department let down Christopher Stevens, Sean Smith, and the other DSS special agents. Those DSS special agents for months sent letters, sent formal requests up the chain to improve their security situation. So they were definitely let down. We weren't. State Department definitely was.
Okay, so when you say we weren't as an agency, you're speaking of a security agency, the people that were there to protect them, as in you guys got everything you needed, but the communications with the State Department, that just wasn't working out well?
So we were separate. So we were there on behalf of the Central Intelligence Agency. So when I say we, I'm speaking of the Central Intelligence Agency. Now the State Department was there separately.
Okay. All right. Okay. That makes sense here. Secretary of State at the time, Hillary Clinton, said that she did all she could to protect the State Department personnel. Would you agree or disagree with that statement based upon your knowledge?
Yeah, we would disagree with that. Actually, the State Department, in about 4 to 5 months prior to the attacks, sent over 600 security requests back to DC to upgrade their compound. Also, we were trying to get them co-located on our compound because we are so worried about their safety because they didn't have the proper security procedure. So we were pushing to get them to come be with us at CIA because we were worried that they were essentially going to get killed. Another thing is, at their compound, they didn't trust their guards, and they thought their guards were linked up with terrorists, which obviously you will see in our book that is proven to be true. So Tig and I were actually doing our own kind of collection on the compound for the State Department so they could prove that the people guarding them were terrorists because their own leadership wouldn't believe them when they told them that.
That is freaking, I'm sorry, that is unbelievable. I don't know if I've read this stuff and forgot it, or if this is. I mean that's almost unbelievable. Were these their guards, if you will? Were they connected to Al Qaeda? Was it another terrorist group? Who was guarding them?
Yeah, so the main group guarding them was a militia. They were called 17 February Martyrs Brigade. They were actually funded by the government of Libya. There was over 30 attackers that sometime in the year prior had been a member of 17 February Martyrs Brigade. So 30 of them. One of the attackers actually guarded the ambassador when he was special envoy in 2011 in Benghazi. So yeah, they had connections to a lot of different terrorist groups.
Okay, this is. Okay, that I'm sorry. I'm forgive me. I'm sitting here reacting to this. And do you guys outline this information in your book, Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy?
In detail.
Wait to get my hands on it. I mean, honestly, if you guys don't mind, I'll tell you right now, just based on the stuff that I'm already hearing, I want to read the book and make sure that I have you guys back. This fascinates me. I'm just, it's weird, I guess, and I know they're not connected, but just seeing the recent, as I told you, I'm a conservative, but just seeing, I know it's a totally different entity, but FBI, the DOJ, some of the things that are being revealed about them, I feel like I've been naive about our government, and as a conservative, as a Republican, obviously, Democrats get in. Barack Obama, I was never a fan of his. I make no qualms about that kind of stuff. But it's just been fascinating to find out just more and more stuff about some of our institutions that are frankly disturbing. And sadly, I feel like people like you, Boon, don't get the credit that you deserve. I want to ask you this, Boon, if you don't mind. Can you kind of walk us through what happened with the whole Benghazi attack, how you were informed of it, your response to it? Can you kind of walk us through that quickly here?
Very briefly, that's been covered a lot, and in the movies and the books, and then the other guys have talked about it, a lot. Basically, I was on duty that night and got the call over the radio. We were informed of what was going on. We responded. Once we responded, we dealt with some situations over at the consulate. After that was over, we went back to the annex. Once we were at the annex, we were attacked several more times. We dealt with those situations. That brought us to morning. Morning time, we ended up at the airport. Once we were at the airport, we waited for a little while. We made sure all the other Americans were gone. And then we ended up being extracted on a Libyan aircraft later on. So that's it in a nutshell. Now, I know you wanted more detail, and there's a lot in between that, but it's been covered a lot.
Yeah, and if you want anything specific in the middle, just ask us.
No, I mean that's absolutely fine, and I'll be honest with you, Boon. I almost expected you to answer, and in the way that you did, and listen, I know. I mean, as I'm speaking to you, I just want you to understand that I respect you highly, and I do consider you a hero. I know, I'm sure in your eyes you were doing your job, but I mean, honestly, just hearing you is fascinating. You know, it's already been covered. It's been covered a lot. I appreciate your humility on the situation, but honestly, I just think you guys were just complete and utter heroes. It's kind of what we hope for with people like you, and for sure, you're an asset to the United States, and definitely didn't let us down. So I just want to make that emphatically clear. I appreciate your humility on the issue, but I just want to say that out loud. Are there some things in the book that you guys, Sarah or Boon, that you're eager for the listening audience to find out about? Some things perhaps that were conspiracy theory where you guys set the record straight, some information that you believe is instrumental, perhaps some things that you picked up on in the select committee. Sarah, I know there's obviously things that you won't be able to speak on, but are there some nuggets that you guys are like, hey, people really need to know about this? And again, I'm speaking to Dave Boon Benton, and I'm also speaking to Sarah Adams. And Sarah was on the select committee for Benghazi. Also, are you still a CIA targeter?
No, I'm not. I work for the Department of Defense now, which is funny because they're the ones that haven't approved my book yet. So there's a job satisfaction problem going on right
now. Any way they want to avoid printing that book, or suspect before the midterm elections there?
So just to be clear, our investigation is completely independent. So everything that we've uncovered is separate from anything we did with any agency, or it's completely separate from her time with the select committee. This has 100% been information that we've discovered on our own.
And to answer your question, so one of the key takeaways is obviously we wanted to prove to the American public that this was an Al-Qaeda attack. Everybody kind of doesn't realize Al-Qaeda is still out there. Al-Qaeda is still after us. Al-Qaeda is still a threat. I mean, even our own intelligence community is almost like turning away from Al-Qaeda. It's like they want you to think they're not out there anymore. It's very concerning. The other really key part is the government of Libya was funding most of the terrorists that attacked us. The ones who are still alive are still being funded by the government of Libya. We are allied with the government of Libya.
Okay, that's utterly insane. I'm glad you brought. We're helping. The United States is helping to fund terrorists, and that's great news. And then also, Boon, you guys did this totally separate from the government. I think Sarah basically answered the question. This is something independently. Right now, we're being told that J6 they're the biggest threat, but you guys are making the case that there's a bigger threat. There's an enemy out there that's. I mean, obviously, you can tell I'm a little perturbed with that particular situation, but we need to be concerned about a looming threat that still exists outside of the United States.
Yeah, excuse me. Not just Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is a problem. Like I said, in Libya, we're essentially aiding and abetting them. The same thing's now happening in Afghanistan, right? We're basically partially recognizing the government of the Taliban government. There's already been 4 Al-Qaeda training centers established in Afghanistan in the last year, according to information we've collected, open source. So we're very concerned that Al-Qaeda is growing a base in Afghanistan right now, and our government's turning a blind eye to it.
Okay, that's that's astonishing to me that our government is turning a total blind eye to this. Why do you think that's the case? I know that's it's speculation, but what's the problem here? What's going on here?
Well, we had the same thing happen in Libya. They established a base in Libya and we didn't do anything about it. The person who did something about it is a gentleman named General Haftar. He's a Libyan who's in opposition to his government. He actually went in and basically wiped out Al Qaeda's base in Libya, but we didn't do anything about Al Qaeda's base. The only thing we worked against in Libya is ISIS. I think the narrative is that Al Qaeda is on the run. Al Qaeda doesn't exist anymore, so we don't really go after Al Qaeda anymore.
Okay. Do you guys, based on what you just said, should America be concerned that perhaps we'll see another terrorist-style attack on the homeland here, an Islamic terrorist attack?
So there's always that possibility, and Americans should always be concerned. Fortunately, our intelligence services are very good at preventing things from coming to the homeland, but we are kind of dropping the ball and creating that situation to where it could happen. So we should definitely be concerned.
Wow. Okay. And then obviously, have you guys seen an increase, or do you have knowledge of an increase perhaps in recruitment from some of the terrorist organizations in the Middle East that you're aware of subsequent to the Afghanistan? I call it retreat and surrender, but what's your take on that?
I'm not sure about increases in recruitment. It's just something I haven't looked at. I think there's increases in propaganda. Obviously, propaganda leads to recruitment, financing, those type of things. Terrorists have grabbed onto the fact that basically the Taliban beat the United States. It took them 20 years, but they beat them. That's the one scary thing about terrorists. They do work on very long timelines. They're encouraged by those timelines because they know we have short timelines. And I think we just proved to them that if they wait us out, they will win. They just have to keep the fight up.
Can I ask you guys, as far as I know this is somewhat of a different topic, but going back to the Afghanistan withdrawal or whatever you want to call it, do you guys feel like the timing of that was wrong? Was it the right call to leave Bagram Air Force?
We actually have strong opinions on it. We like to call it the Afghanistan handover, which is what it was. The Taliban didn't take the country. The country was given to them. It was given to them by us. We failed our Afghani allies, and it's pretty sad. It was a political move. The timing was horrible. We always planned to leave Afghanistan. The current administration planned to leave Afghanistan, but there's a way to do it that's tactically sound and allows the Afghanis to run their own government and keep their country secure. The way that our current administration did it put the entire world at risk.
I mean, and that's a true statement, and put the world at risk. I mean, we're looking at everyone talks about Russia and Ukraine, and I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, I mean, there's obviously we're in the middle of a proxy war. It seems to me, but I'm like, would that have even taken place had the world not been witnessing what occurred in Afghanistan? The same could be said, I think, about China's aggression towards Taiwan. Do you guys have a take on that?
Yeah, I think if you show weakness, enemies will take advantage of it. Obviously, terrorists are really good at taking advantage of weakness. And then, as you saw, nation states like Russia also can do that, and China. I think we're now kind of in a downward spiral where we will see more people over the next couple of years taking advantage of our weakness because they know they can.
You say to people that say, hey, listen, I mean, to be concerned about anything happening overseas, I mean, this is neocon stuff, or kind of dividing Americans between those lines. Why should we be concerned with what's happening in the Middle East as Americans?
Yeah, I have two really good examples. So When our attack happened in Benghazi, the attackers fled because they thought the U.S. were going to come and, rain hell on them, as we usually do, as retribution. They actually had official passports made by the government of Libya. So they had passports in other names they could travel on. Now, for the last year, on Thursdays, the Taliban issues passports to terrorists. You don't even have to be an Afghan. So a terrorist from another country can go to the Taliban, get an Afghan passport. That person can get into a refugee pipeline. There's a lot of other opportunities, and they can get here. So we do need to care because they are targeted to come here. They want to come here, and they're going to take advantages of these situations to get here.
Man, I mean, fascinating stuff. Again, my guest, Sarah Adams, she was on the select committee for Benghazi, former CIA targeter as well, and also Dave Boon Benton. I mean, you can read the book, you can see the movie. What were you, did you say 6'1" or 6'4" white guy in the movie? All right, but I encourage you, if you haven't seen those or read the book, to make sure you go ahead and check it out, and make sure you look for their book that will be coming out as soon as it is approved by the DoD. Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy, and obviously a lot of details that we're going to want to know and pick up on. What are some of the let me ask this. Okay, Christopher Stevens, now deceased, obviously, Ambassador Christopher Stevens. Can I just ask on a personal level, what it's like to know that you guys have the opportunity to prevent something, and people that you're speaking out to are just not paying attention in the upper echelons of the federal government, because this was totally an avoidable situation. Benghazi was.
It's very disappointing. I spent my adult life in the service of the government, and I really believed in my government, and it's very disappointing because I no longer have faith in my government. I love my country, but my government has failed us, and they're failing the American people. So it's very disappointing.
You say failing the American people. Is there something perhaps that's even in your book where you're like, hey, our government is failing us here, guys. We need to be aware of this.
If you read the book, it'll be extremely clear that they dropped the ball. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing I brought up earlier. Our government puts policies in place, and then, like I said, it basically supports terrorism. It doesn't actually help eradicate terrorism. It's a huge problem. They want to shift to focus on Russia. They want to shift to focus on China, and they want to forget terrorism is occurring. We're very concerned about it. I mean, to this day, I'm still disappointed in my government. They aren't taking action against terrorists when we ask them to. So I do think the American public needs to understand that. We gave up a lot of lives fighting this war on terror, and now it's the end of the game, and we're gonna let the terrorists win, and it's very tragic.
Do you think that this has anything to do with political correctness, or is this is just the way big government kind of works? I mean, like they get voters hyped up over a particular situation. You guys go in to do your job with the best of intentions, but the political class, even I was a big fan of George W. Bush anymore. I have mixed feelings about him now. What's your take on that? What is it? Is it political correctness? What is it?
So there is a separation. There is an us and them. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, up in Washington, it doesn't matter. All right. Birds of a feather flock together. They are not for the American people. They do not represent the American people, either side. Now, there's Republicans who are just as bad as Democrats, far left, far right. It's definitely us against them. They no longer represent the true American common person anymore. It's failed policy. Politics drive everything we do all around the world. It's all related to politics.
Yeah, and I think if you're asking politics today, one of the issue is they want us to think domestic terrorists are our biggest threats. So if you actually go after Al-Qaeda or you go after the Taliban and you start putting these real terrorists on the X, it takes away from that narrative, because it's like, well, why are you spending time on these global terrorists if you're saying the ones at home are the biggest threat? So there is an issue with their narrative. They need to fix it so they actually go get the job done right.
Oh, man, that's frustrating. And unfortunately, I feel like we've gone so far off the rails. I'm not convinced at all that they'll try to fix the narrative, because now I'm seeing what, I've spoken about this for years on radio and now in podcasting. But even though I spoke about corruption that could take place in some of these institutions, where it is us against them, a society of elites. When they get to Washington, D.C., it seems, even in some of these state capitals as well. In us, I wasn't convinced, I guess, that we would see the day where, I question everything our institutions do. In a sense, I feel like you guys are kind of, fortunately, I heard you in another podcast, Sarah, talking about Trey Gowdy being a part of the select committee, and there were certain things that were. Let me just ask this: like Trey Gowdy's role. I really thought he was a firebrand, really wanting to go after the truth about Benghazi, really wanting to go after these terrorists. What's your take on that?
Sure, I think. So Trey Gowdy, yes, was the right person to do that. They had him in the wrong job, right? Trey Gowdy should have been Attorney General. If that's what everybody wanted Trey Gowdy to do, he should have been put in the job where he can actually do it. The congressional committee collected information, put out a report. But yes, Trey Gowdy would have been better, maybe Attorney General, head of the FBI, I don't know. But he was not put in the position to do what everybody wanted him to do.
Okay, I'm glad you offered that clarity, because I really liked him at the time, and I'm like, man, did he just drop the ball? And you would hear so many people talk about that, but simply being in Congress, they just don't have the power to do what Americans want them to do, which is to punish some of the people that were involved in Benghazi.
Yeah, correct. And like I said, I do think he is the kind of person that could have done that, but he wasn't put in the right position to do that, to prosecute people and to go down that path, for a variety of topics that he could have probably been successful at doing it.
The title of the book is Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy. Who's our enemy?
Well, it is a play on words. We actually do it as a joke because our government doesn't know the enemy. And so our book is to show them who the enemy is. So we are trying to tell them, this is our enemy. We're showing you, like, you should know, it's been 10 years. So yeah, the title's a little play on words, but it is the fact that we don't know our enemy. It's a huge problem. It's a huge intelligence gap, and we got to get better at this.
You guys know the enemy. If people pick up the book, according to what you're saying, they're gonna get great detail and specificity. There's going to be clarification. There's going to be no doubt who America's enemies are. Am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're absolutely right. And it's not another Benghazi book. It's not political at all. It does focus on who the enemy is.
Enemies that we need to be aware of and concerned about going forward. Is that a safe statement?
Yeah, we still have attackers at large. So they're in the book. They're highlighted at being a large. Even if they don't leave the country, even though some are living in Southern Europe, even if they don't leave the country, remember, Americans are in Libya. They're in the oil industry. Eventually, we're going to go back and have, the diplomatic presence. So if they don't identify who these people are now, they're going to continue to be a threat. They're still carrying out attacks. They're still killing people. Our attackers alone have killed thousands of Libyans in the last 10 years because nobody locked them up. It's very concerning.
That's fascinating to me. Are we prepared as Americans, in your opinions, to be able to combat a threat as far as terrorism is concerned, Islamic terrorism, whether it's here in the homeland or if something overseas strikes at our national interest? Do you guys feel as if our military is capable or able?
So there's two answers to that. One is, yes, we have the capability to combat these threats, but no, we're not, because it's not our focus.
Yeah, the policy has to be in place. We saw this in Afghanistan for 20 years. They refused to call the Taliban a terrorist group, so we had the best soldiers in the world there fighting, but we tied their wrists and said, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, because they're not exactly a terrorist. And we didn't really take the senior leaders off the battlefield, and now they're all the leaders. People are like, how are they still alive? It's been 20 years. Policy. We had the best men there. We didn't give them the best leadership.
Concerning Benghazi itself and the attack on the consulate there, perhaps information that you feel people need to know, should know, or don't know, or perhaps information that has been, I don't know, just made up or wrong?
So absolutely, there is a lot, and there's a lot associated with Benghazi, and most of it's negative. So Benghazi was never a conspiracy. There was nothing to cover up. Politically, because it was election time, they chose to cover things up and run with it with a false narrative. That never needed to happen. There's no conspiracy in Benghazi. They turned it into a conspiracy. A lot of people don't realize that Sarah was in Benghazi before the attacks. She was there the day of, and she was there after. She also served on the select committee. So she has the best insight into the totality of circumstances, if you will. And there's multiple issues on multiple levels with Benghazi. Obviously, the White House had their own issues. The State Department had their own issues. Department of Defense had their own issues. And then the agency had some internal issues as well. So there's multiple parts to the who and the what and the why. But there's a lot of negative rumors going around, like Christopher Stevens' body being desecrated or assaulted. That never happened. He was actually treated with a lot of respect, and his body was delivered to us very respectfully.
Back in the day, I was reading how his body was, in fact, desecrated, and some pretty gruesome things. That was not true.
Not at all. He wasn't found by terrorists. He was actually found by Libyans in the neighborhood who respected him and supported him.
Wow. Okay, so I do recall pictures or video of, I felt like Libyans that were, it seemed like, I mean, it looked like he was on death's door at the time, but seemingly trying to help him or drag him away from the consulate. Am I remembering that correctly? Does that ring a bell? Make sense?
Yeah, so that photo, unfortunately, is a picture of Ambassador Stevens deceased. He was actually deceased for quite some time during that photo. They didn't know that at the time. They thought he was alive, so they rejoiced. They're actually saying Allah Akbar, but they were saying it as they were rejoicing that, hey, we found an American, he's alive. Not the same as a terrorist would say Allah Akbar before they attack or go high order with a suicide vest. So it gets confused and convoluted sometimes. It's just like any picture. I can take a picture or a piece of a video, show you a piece of it, and then you can get a false narrative out of it. And that's what happened with that picture.
Yeah, and then what happened after that picture is them carrying him to a vehicle where then a neighbor that knew Ambassador Stevens and knew the Americans drove him to Benghazi Medical Center. So he was driven to the hospital actually by someone who knew him.
Fascinating. I mean, this is, I don't know. I mean, this is, for me, it's really important to know the truth of the situation. For one, I mean, if we have allies in a region, I want to make sure that we know about them. If we have enemies, I want to make sure that people know about them as well. Is there anything else that you guys can add to what occurred that evening or during that time frame? We know the YouTube video was a complete and utter lie. We know that Susan Rice went out and gave some talking points on all the Sunday shows, saying that this video was to blame. But we know that was a lie. Is there some transparency issues that you guys wish the Obama administration perhaps would have divulged?
Absolutely. They should have just been honest in the first place and said, hey, this was an Al-Qaeda attack, which they knew from the start, and they knew it had nothing to do with that video. They should have just said, hey, this was an Al-Qaeda attack. They caught us with our pants down. We will do everything in our power to bring them to justice. And that would have been enough for the American people.
Man, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. All right, guys. Listen, I want to make sure that you guys plug your book, plug where people can find you, and all of that good stuff, social media, websites. So, will you guys take the time to do that, and then anything else that you want to share before we close out here? I'd love for you guys to share, and in anticipation of your book, I would love to have you guys back. But if you can share any last minute information. And please, again, feel free to share your information.
Sure. The last point then to make is some of our attackers are actually in custody in Libya. Libya doesn't hold them very long if they're linked to Al-Qaeda. So we do hope when the book comes out, the American public is going to help us pressure the government to extradite at least the ones that are high risk of being released so they don't get released to kill again. One of our attackers has been detained 4 times. After one of his releases, he carried out an attack that killed over 140 people. So we're very concerned about this. We want to save other lives. It's just not about justice for our friends. We know Ron and Bub would want us to stop these attackers from killing other people. As you know, we have kind of a limited presence right now because we don't have the approval. So we have a small page on Instagram. It's at Askari Media Group. That's ASKARI Media Group. That's going to be our main way we just update with dates. And then it'll be available on Amazon when it's available to distribute.
Askari Media Group?
Correct.
On Instagram. ASKARI. Yes. Okay. Something came. Now I forget it. I was going to say something came to my. Guantanamo. I definitely wanted to hear that.
I don't think we should keep it open because basically you're making, if you don't bring those people to justice, right? You're not making, you're not showing the terrorists that you'll bring into the justice. The problem is the terrorists see us being light on terrorism and they're like, okay, we'll just keep going. We're not putting people to death. Think of when did we put a terrorist to death in the United States? We detained KSM, so Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was the mastermind on 9/11 in 2003, and he still hasn't been tried. So this actually reinvigorates the terrorists. It gives them hope because they're like, now they're still in custody. We can do prisoner releases. We can kidnap people like the ambassador, and we can swap them for our prisoners in custody, right? Because they haven't been given the death penalty. They are able to be swapped. Even those 5 we had swapped for Bergdahl, they're active. 3 of them are basically senior leaders right now in the Afghan Taliban. They're committing terrorist attacks. They got released from Guantanamo because they didn't go through the justice system. So they're at a point where we could still release them. And so this gives terrorists an opening.
There's another parallel to Guantanamo. There's a prison called Abu Salim, which is kind of like our Guantanamo. And what you'll see in the book is that a lot of those terrorists have that in common, to where they were actually served in prison together, and they kind of make those bonds stronger and come up with plans and other attack plans in prison to where, hey, when we get out, this is what we need to do. So they strategize in prison. So if we're going to have a Guantanamo or Abu Salim prison, they need to be dealt with and tried quickly.
Yeah, and the other thing Boon brings up, those terrorists who were in prison in Libya, most of them were in prison for life. They got released during the Democratic Arab Spring, and that's why they were free to come attack us.
Jeez. It's almost as if we're rooting for the freaking terrorists. It's unbelievable. Let me get your take real quick before we close out. Nation building. A lot of nation building, quote unquote, work. Give us your takes on that. What should be the military focus when we go in to deal with terrorists or people that threaten the United States of America? Do we have any hope of nation building in the Middle East and places like Afghanistan?
So we are one world.
Libya, so
if you go up in outer space and look down, there's no lines dividing countries and states and cities. It's one world. So we do all need to work together. Nation building does need to happen, but it needs to happen from the perspective that, hey, we're all in this together, not because of political ideologies. And that's what usually pushes nation building. So when it comes to certain countries, like, Afghanistan, for instance, or Libya, if we're going to nation build, then we have to be serious we have to commit to those nations and support them and see it all the way through. We can't get what we want and then abandon them, and that's what we've done for years.
What about those that would say, well, do we have interest in places like this overseas? What would be your response to that, Boon?
I worry that some of our interests end up being corruption. We hold on to and we ally with these leaders who basically develop corrupt governments, corrupt systems. They don't take care of their people. And we stay allied with them. We enable them. I mean, I think Hamid Karzai in Afghanistan is a really great example. Obviously, as we're going to show people in our book, the Libyan government's another really great example. So maybe we start idealistic, but then I do think it becomes a money resources grab. And I don't actually think we're good at nation building, because I do think we have enough corruption in our own government that we just are not going to be able to put the right ideals into a different society. I don't think it's the right fit for us.
Basically, we need, if we go anywhere overseas, we need a clear and defined mission. And it sounds like we need to get in and get out. We need to recognize who our enemies are, our allies are, respect our allies. Definitely don't abandon our freaking allies. But also just go there to take care of business, because it does seem to me that and I wasn't always of this opinion, but politicians, it becomes a political game. Sadly, it becomes a political game to too many politicians. And you're right on both sides. I never thought I'd be saying this, but it seems pretty clear to me at this point. So listen, guys, I can't wait to read the book. I can't wait to get more clarity. And I appreciate you guys staying on top of it. Boon, I definitely appreciate your service, and I appreciate you staying on top of this. Sarah, I appreciate you being willing to stay on top of this, and I know you put yourself in harm's way for the United States of America as well, and I'm very appreciative of that. I want to make that emphatically clear. And again, make sure you guys go out and get the book when it does come out, and we will have you guys back if you don't mind. But Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy, look for that book. I mean, we have just celebrated isn't the right word, but we've just, I mean, it's been 10 years, and I still feel like we don't have the answers that the American public deserves. And it sounds like this book is going to be able to do that. So Sarah Adams and Dave Boon Benton, I appreciate you guys coming on. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
All right, guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Please share this on YouTube and Rumble. I hope that you've enjoyed this podcast. Also, please be sure to support Mike Lindell, MyPillow, MyPillow.com. Again, use that promo code Carl, CARL. Click on the radio listener square. Take advantage of any deals on MyPillow, but specifically right now, you got the Giza Dream Sheets and the Perkel Sheets selling for $29.98. So take advantage of that for the Christmas holiday season coming up. I know you'll be blessed by that. So we really do appreciate you listening. Follow me on social media, wherever I am on social media, The Carl Jackson Show. And until next time, don't grow weary doing good. God bless you.